Top FBI official Bill Priestap turns on Comey. Assistant Director of the FBI Counterintelligence Division Bill Priestap has turned on former Director James Comey, confirming that he is indeed a traitor of America. According to House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence member Chris Stewart, Bill Priestap is fully cooperating with President Trump's Justice Department, ratting on his former deep state colleagues at the Bureau and exposing how they attempted to interfere in the 2016 presidential election on behalf of Obama and Clinton. Yes, you heard that correctly. Bill Priestap is cooperating. When you understand how central E.W. Bill Priestap was to the entire 2016-2017 Russian conspiracy operation, the absence of his name amid all others created a curiosity. I wrote a Twitter thread about him last year and wrote about him extensively because it seemed unfathomable his name had not been part of any of the recent storylines. E.W. Bill Priestap is the head of the FBI counterintelligence operation. He was FBI agent Peter Strzok's direct boss. If anyone in Congress really wanted to know if the FBI paid for the Christopher Steele dossier, Bill Priestap is the guy who would know everything about everything. FBI Assistant Director in charge of counterintelligence Bill Priestap was the immediate supervisor of FBI Counterintelligence Deputy Peter Strzok. Bill Priestap is number 1. Before getting demoted, Peter Strzok was number 2. The investigation into candidate Donald Trump was a counterintelligence operation. The operation began in July of 2016. Bill Priestap would have been in charge of that, along with all other FBI counterintelligence operations. FBI Deputy Peter Strzok was specifically in charge of the Trump counterintel op. However, Strzok would be reporting to Bill Priestap on every detail and couldn't, according to structure anyway, make a move without Priestap's approval. On March 20th of 2017, congressional testimony, James Comey was asked why the FBI director did not inform congressional oversight about the counterintelligence operation that began in July of 2016. Oversight protocol requires the FBI director to tell the Congressional Intelligence Gang of 8 of any counterintelligence operations. The GO8 has oversight into these ops at the highest level of classification. In July of 2016, the time the operation began, oversight was the responsibility of this group, the Gang of 8. Obviously, based on what we have learned since March of 2017 and what has surfaced recently, we can all see why the FBI would want to keep it hidden that they were running a counterintelligence operation against a presidential candidate. After all, as FBI agent Peter Strzok said in his text messages, it was an insurance policy. So here we have former FBI Director James Comey telling Congress on March 20th of 2017 that the reason he didn't inform the statutory oversight gang of 8 was because Bill Priestap, Director of Counterintelligence, recommended he didn't do it. Apparently, according to Comey, Bill Priestap carries a great deal of influence if he could get his boss to not perform a statutory obligation simply by recommending he just doesn't do it. Then again, as we see in this next video, Comey's blame casting there is really called creating a fall guy. Former FBI Director James Comey was ducking responsibility in March of 2017 by blaming FBI Director of Counterintelligence Bill Priestap for not informing Congress of the operation that began in July of 2016, 9 months prior.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Comey and Admiral Rogers, for your testimony today. My first set of questions are directed at Director Comey. Broadly, when the FBI has any open counterintelligence investigation, what are the typical protocols or procedures for notifying the DNI, the White House, and senior congressional leadership?
There is a practice of a quarterly briefing on sensitive cases to the chair and ranking of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. And the reason I hesitate is, thanks to feedback we've gotten, we're trying to make it better. And that involves a briefing of the Department of Justice, I believe the DNI, and some portion of the National Security Council at the White House.
So if that's quarterly,
to brief them before Congress is briefed.
So it's quarterly for all three, then senior congressional leadership, the White House, and the DNI?
I think that's right. Now, that's by practice, not by rule or by written policy, which is why, thanks to the chair and ranking giving us feedback, we're trying to tweak it in certain ways.
So since in your opening statement you confirmed that there is a counterintelligence investigation currently open, and you also referenced that it started in July, when did you notify the DNI, the White House, or senior congressional leadership?
It's a good question. Congressional leadership, sometime recently, they were briefed on the nature of the investigation in some detail, as I said. Obviously, the Department of Justice has been aware of it all along. The DNI, I don't know what the DNI's knowledge of it was, because we didn't have a DNI until Mr. Coates took office, and I briefed him his first morning in office.
So just to drill down on this, if the open investigation began in July and the briefing of congressional leadership only occurred recently, why was there no notification prior to the past month?
I think our decision was it was a matter of such sensitivity that we wouldn't include it in the quarterly briefings.
So when you state our decision, is that your decision? Is that usually your decision what gets briefed in those quarterly updates?
No, it's usually the decision of the head of our counterintelligence division.
And just, again, to get the detailed on the record, why was the decision made not to brief senior congressional leadership until recently, when the investigation had been open since July, a very serious investigation? Why was that decision made to wait months?
Because of the sensitivity of the matter?
Stepping back more broadly, in the case of Russia, we know that cyber hacking is just one tactic that's typically part of a broader influence or information warfare campaign. And we know the Russian government is ready and willing to employ hacking as but one of many tools in their toolkit to obtain information for use against the United States. Is there any evidence that Russia tried to hack other entities associated with the 2016 presidential campaign in addition to the DNC or Clinton campaign operatives?
Yes, many others.
Can you specify those others? Did that include the RNC? Did that include any of the other campaigns of candidates in the primaries, either Democrats or Republicans?
I think what we can say in an unclassified setting is what we have in the report, that there were efforts to penetrate organizations associated with the Republican Party, and that, I think that's what we said in the report, and that there were not releases of material hacked from any Republican-associated organizations.
But the hacking, the use of cyber tools as part of their broader, whether you call it hybrid warfare or information warfare campaigns, it was done to both parties.
Correct.
Thank you. Taking a further step back of what's been in the news recently, and I'm referring to the Yahoo hack, the Yahoo data breach. Last week, the Department of Justice announced that it was charging hackers with ties to the FSB in the 2014 Yahoo data breach. Was this hack done, to your knowledge, for intelligence purposes?
I can't say in this forum.
Press reporting indicates that Yahoo hacks targeted journalists, dissidents, and government officials. Do you know what the FSB did with the information they obtained?
Same answer.
Okay, I understand that. How did the administration determine who to sanction as part of the election hacking? How familiar are with that decision process, and how is that determination made?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the decision process. The FBI has a factual input, but I don't recall. I don't have any personal knowledge of how the decisions were made about who to sanction.
Looking forward, and this is for both of you, what is the NSA and the FBI doing to keep Americans safe, to keep campaign entities, to keep any entity associated with a major campaign safe from aggressive Russia cyber measures that were utilized in this past election?
So we continue to maximize the insights we're generating about activity. For example, this started with NSA initially gaining access in the summer of 15. We became aware of that activity, shared it with our FBI teammates. That continues. We try to make sure that the insights we generate are shared with our law enforcement teammates who then interact with the private sector. We're trying to work broadly across the U.S. government to increase cybersecurity, as you heard discuss, ongoing discussions about what's the role of the voting infrastructure in the United States in terms of critical infrastructure. Do we need to bring that within the critical infrastructure framework? I know that topic has been ongoing for some period of time.
And Director Comey?
Yeah, I think that's right. And just making sure that we are sharing information when we get it, that someone's being hit, but more importantly, that we're showing people what we've learned from this cycle so they can tighten up.
Thank you. It seems to me in my first line of questioning, the more serious a counterintelligence investigation is, that would seem to trigger the need to update not just the White House, the DNI, but also senior congressional leadership. And you stated it was due to the severity. I think moving forward, it seems that the most severe and serious investigations should be notified to senior congressional leadership. And with that, thanks for the lenience, Chairman. I yield back.
That's good feedback, Ms. Stefanik. The challenge for us is sometimes we want to keep it tight within the executive branch, and if we're going to go brief congressional leaders, the practice has been then we brief inside the executive branch, and so we have to figure out how to navigate that in a good way.
Did you notice that, ladies and gentlemen?